Hi all. These are generally conversations between adults after the children have left the table. The language can be spicy and the subjects can get saucy. So if you're ready, this is the Southern Fork. Unscripted kitchen chats and also studio chats with some of the most interesting voices in the culinary South. I'm Stephanie Burt, a food and beverage writer who travels with her fork to write for a variety of publications, from magazines you might have on your coffee table to the website you love to visit for your favorite recipes. And I'm inviting you to come behind the scenes with me to get to know the people who make this Southern culinary landscape so special. I'm always hungry for the next bite, thirsty for that next sip, and ready for the next conversation. Let's dig in. The Southern Fork is presented by Townsend Automotive in Tuscaloosa, Alabama. Well, it's beach season, shrimp season, farm stand season, and ice cream season, and so you know what that means. It's road trip season. I'm out on the road sharing good eats and drinks and introducing you to the people behind them. So if you're inspired to get out here too, but your vehicle is less than inspiring, please consider purchasing your next road trip ride from Townsend Automotive. Celebrating 49 years serving West Alabama, this company has been extending its reach so that you don't even have to be in the Tuscaloosa area to purchase a car from them. Nationwide vehicle delivery service is available for Southern Fork listeners, and it's something that makes buying just the right new or certified pre-owned vehicle even easier. Visit townsendhonda.com for current inventory. Or, of course, if you're in West Alabama, stop in. Townsend Automotive always salutes local entrepreneurs, from restaurateurs to podcasters, and they welcome you to be part of a community that does the same. Greenville, South Carolina is not only a food-focused destination, it's a place that celebrates the active life through its parks and most notably, its Swamp Rabbit Trail, a 22-mile walking and biking greenway that connects the city to nearby Travelers Rest, South Carolina. About halfway between the cities is the Swamp Rabbit Café and Grocery. Mary Walsh, along with her co-founder Jac Oliver, began the business in 2011 to provide easier access to local, responsibly grown and sourced food in the area. Neither of them had entrepreneurial experience or had run a grocery store, but they shared a passion for local farmers and artisans and wanted to connect them with people who had an affinity for quality food. Through the years, Swamp Rabbit has become a powerhouse in the South Carolina food system, and they've built a brand synonymous with a healthy, active lifestyle. The Cafe and Grocery is a joyous place filled with bikers stopping off the trail, children playing in the playground, people grocery shopping, tables filling up with a hungry lunch crowd, and fresh breads and pastries coming out of the ovens on the regular. Welcome to the Southern Fork.
Thank you. I'm happy to be here.
Oh, I'm happy to be here. I've heard about Swamp Rabbit for so long and the Swamp Rabbit Trail, and I've always been so entrenched in downtown Greenville that I haven't made it out 1.6 miles from downtown, which is where I was when I decided to drive this way. You're right here on the trail, and it's, what day is it? Thursday. It's hot. It's in the summer, and it's packed here. Bikers are coming through. Cyclists are coming through. Is this an average day?
In the summertime when school's out, it can be. Although it did just get hot kind of suddenly really quickly. And I think as the heat goes on, people start to stay in during this time.
Yeah. Well, how did you pick this spot first before we get into the mini origin story of Swamp Rabbit Cafe and Grocery? How did you choose this spot right here?
So about 13 years ago, my friend and I and coworker, Jac Oliver, we decided we wanted to open a business that was focused on supporting local farmers and food makers. So once we knew we were going to do that, we started looking for properties. And at the time, I didn't have any kids yet. And I was one of those people who was very wanting to ride my bicycle everywhere to do everything. And I had grown up in a city where we only had one family car and my dad took it to work every day. So that's just kind of how I grew up. And in Greenville was not very
pedestrian friendly.
Yes. And so there were very limited places, but because when you ride your bike, especially in a community like this, you take a lot of back roads because you want to avoid the 5-lane highways. And so we started looking for a property that was safely, and emphasis on safely, accessible by car, walking, or bike. This property, I had been riding past it for a while, and it had been abandoned. And then I thought, it was kind of far out of town and there was really not much else around here. And I thought, well, it's on this newly open section of the Swamp Rabbit Trail, which, I would ride every day back and forth to work and often be the only one on it at the time. So we started looking into it, and turned out we knew the person who owned the property. We found him and we told him our idea. And at the time, another crazy story, he had brought the property because he was also a cycling advocate and an advocate for safer streets. And somebody wanted to turn this property into a scrap metal yard. He didn't think that was going to be good for the community or for the trail or cycling. And so he had just bought it just to save it from becoming that. And then when we approached him, he decided he would just be an awesome do-gooder.
That
and
sounds like
build it up.
a lot of serendipitous moments right there.
Yes.
Yeah.
Definitely.
We hear a lot about infrastructure and Swamp Rabbit. The Swamp Rabbit Trail now is just such an established part, but it's great to talk about that in its infancy. Let's also talk about trying to buy local in Greenville in its infancy, because really, when I came in 2013, the farmers market was just beginning. It had only been around for a little bit. Now it's wall-to-wall people. I mean, it's wild out there, and I bought a ton of stuff. And what got you interested in, importantly enough, to stake a claim, a business on it?
So my partner and I, Jac, we would go to that farmer's market 13 years ago, and we would plan our whole lives around it. We would get as much as we could on Saturday, and then other days we would supplement, sometimes even drive out to a farm to pick out stuff, because there was really no one-stop shop for getting local food or fresh foods and healthy foods. It really started out as we saw a need. And I feel like that's the classic
It
startup
is the classic,
story.
right? Yeah.
So we saw that there was a big need, or at least something we really wanted. And so we went ahead and did it. And that's really how we came to be.
And so when you're at the farmer's market, I just have to reiterate, you're getting to know the farmers. So then they become your first wholesale customers, right?
Yeah. When we opened the business, we basically called everyone in the farmer's market, and we bought from just about everybody who was there. And then we would, hear about their friends, or we would just scavenge, the internet or local food magazines and try to accumulate people that way.
Yay, local food magazines. We like that. How many different vendors do you have here? Do you have like a guesstimate of that?
Yeah, it's about 300.
Wow.
And, it's a rolling average because we'll enlist new farmers all the time. And then some farmers will stop wholesaling or sometimes stop farming. So we kind of average around 300 different farmers and food makers.
And it feels like a grocery store. I mean, it feels like many of the grocery stores I've been to around the world. It kind of feels like a Vermont co-op a little bit. In that model. We were walking through the space, and there's a lot of space here. There's a lot of area for parking and sitting outside, but also square footage within these buildings. Will you tell that story about having children within the first year?
Sure. So we thought we would open like early spring. And I think like if you talk to any other business owner, when they're doing construction and trying to build a business, it takes twice as long as you think. So my partner had it all planned, and she was pregnant and just thought she would have the baby a year into opening. And it turned out she was going to have her baby like 2 months after we opened. So she did. And then I call those the dark ages because I would come. She was basically disappeared for 2 months at least. And I would show up at 6 in. I would bake everything, open the store, work the register, make cappuccinos, and I would just do everything. And probably every few weeks, we would accumulate another employee. And most of the times it would be a friend or a customer. So we started building up more help, but it was a lot of work. And my husband would go to work in the morning, stop by for breakfast, help me do some things, come back after work and help me mop the floors, and then go home.
That brings us to the baking part of I can eat some bread, but I just had the most delicious loaf, and it was a gift because I was a first-time visitor.
Oh,
yeah. So, baking has always been part of this, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah. So it started with the grocery. We knew we wanted to offer like grocery items that were local and special and thoughtfully sourced. And then there were a lot of might as wells as we went on. Well, there's not a coffee shop serving really good coffee with local milk, and there's not a bakery using really good ingredients. And if we're going to bake stuff, we might as well make sandwiches. And so a lot of that stuff happened. And I was pretty much a hobbyist baker, and I used to do a lot of stuff from home and experimenting. But also my background was in engineering. So I wouldn't just do hobbies, I would actually
You would engineer. Well, baking is a great hobby for an engineer, right?
It is.
Don't you think?
Well, because Excel really comes in handy. And then when you need to scale up or adjust
I've never
things,
used Excel, but yes.
But
I
feel like
have, but not for baking. Yeah.
Excel can really be the baker's best friend. And
for scaling.
Yeah, it seems intimidating, but like without it, it's just so easy to change, and adjust things. And so that maybe gave us a little bit of an advantage where I didn't go to culinary school, but I was able to technologically adjust things.
Yeah. And because baking is a formula. So then you could tweak that formula within a math formula, which is what Excel is. It just helps you calculate that. That's interesting. I never really thought about that. Okay. So you're a hobbyist baker. Just as a quick aside, what got you into it? Did you have a cookbook that you loved? Did you have a family member? Did you see something on television?
Well, I think, when I don't get time to like stop and think about how I came to start doing that, because but then I think about my upbringing. And when I was young, I was actually a really picky eater, and I didn't eat fruits or vegetables. And I didn't really like meat or cheese either. So
it was bread.
Yeah. Well, I used to have mayonnaise sandwiches, which is really gross.
Right. It was up north, so I know it wasn't my kind of mayonnaise.
No. No, it wasn't even good mayonnaise. So I grew up picky, but I was surrounded by, family that cooked. And my mom has an interesting, unique background. She's Chinese, but her family emigrated from China to Brazil. So she's ethnically Chinese, ate a lot of Chinese food, but born and raised in Brazil. So also ate a lot of Brazilian food. And they even she's one of 14 kids. And her family operated a Brazilian street food place. Mm-hmm. And so she worked nights for the post office. So she'd be home during the daytime, but she always cooked our food. And she always made me help. And so I think even though I didn't initially branch out very much with eating, I was always surrounded by it, and I was taught to do it. And I think through growing up and traveling and being exposed to different things, I learned to appreciate food in a whole new way. I married a Turkish guy, and Turkish Mediterranean food is just like a whole new world and really exciting. And they make a lot of things by hand. So I think all of that together made me inspired to cook a lot from home.
Right. How has this business, now years in, more than a decade in, as it is in the world, it's an idea, and then you kind of brought it into the real world, and it's moving, and it gets to this point where it's kind of doing things on its own. It's almost like this AI thing. It's this happening over here. Things become organic for the business. How is it different than what you thought? Or did you go that far when you were thinking?
We didn't go that far. And I use the word organic growth a lot because a lot of it did just happen, or a space became available, or an opportunity, or someone had an idea and we ran with it. And when Jac and I started the business, we didn't even think we would have employees. We thought we could just run the place between the two of us. Of course, we were dead wrong. And
because you also had children quickly after her, right?
Yeah. So she had a child. She had a son year 1. And then I joke that I had my revenge in year 2. And then the following 2 years later, we each had another kid. So we have 4 boys between the two of us.
Wow. And they were here in the business until they started elementary school, right?
Yeah. And like, speaking of organic, one thing we're really well known for is we have this fenced-in area with a bunch of, we call them the misfit toys. So there's trucks and things that people have grown out of or don't want anymore, and they have a second life here. Mm-hmm. And we had volunteers reach out to us, and they wanted a project. And we were like, well, we could really use a way to contain our kids while we're working because, we needed to work, but we didn't want our kids to fall in the river. Mm-hmm. So it started out as a fence. We brought some toys, and then customers started bringing some toys. And now, like, people come here to hang out, and we've seen moms meet in the playground and become lifelong friends. So it's turned into a really fun thing, but just started out as a need.
Now, beyond the idea of building this, you have to build in the idea of needing this, building a customer base. Did you find that organically as well? Or did you have to do some education about why eating locally grown food was important?
Yeah, we had to do it all. And I think we opened at a lucky time because I think Greenville was really hungry for a local.
We're all about the puns. I'm all about the puns on the Southern
That wasn't
Fork,
even intentional. But I think Greenville was ready and really wanting a place like this. Mm-hmm. And you could come in here and literally see a tomato farmer delivering tomatoes. And I think that experience was really fun for people who knew about farming, and some people never thought about where their tomatoes came from. So mm-hmm. even just that alone was really helpful to us and like fulfilling to see that connection happen. Also, we opened during the recession. So it was in 2011. And so I think at the time, we joked that we were in the newspaper every other week because no other businesses were opening.
Oh, yeah.
So, yeah, I think all of that helped us gain momentum. And social media was like, we didn't have resources. We didn't take out a huge loan. We each had $30,000 in life savings. We pulled it together and just worked our butts off. And so having that way to advertise freely pretty much helped a lot.
Time, which is a finite commodity in your life.
That's true. And we were lucky, like we both have different strengths and they complement each other. She doesn't like taking pictures, but we joke, my mom
and she doesn't like talking on podcasts either because she sent it straight over to you. She's like, Mayor's going to be fine for this. I'm just letting her do this one.
Yeah, we try to share the burden of everything, which is really helpful when you have a partner. But my mom is, it's the very stereotypical Asian woman who goes to parties and annoys the crap out of everybody because she won't stop taking your picture. And so I kind of do that naturally. And I've just recently come to realize, like, I enjoy it. I'm not just doing it for work. I just take a lot of pictures. And so it didn't feel like a job to me to try to capture these beautiful tomatoes or this customer enjoying this thing or that thing. And so I think that really helped out.
And it is great that you have people that are exercising and enjoying themselves, and many tourists coming through and renting bikes right here. That helps get the word out as well. If you open during the recession, we do have to talk about the cost of local food. We have to talk about building an infrastructure that supports that cost, right?
Yeah. And that's probably one of our biggest, when it comes to educating people, it's really hard for your local farmer to compete on price with a tomato.
It's a volume game.
Yeah. Well, it's volume, but also like standards. And when you source tomatoes from a country that may not have protections for workers, the reason you might be getting super cheap chocolate is because maybe they're using child labor. Right. And, there's really dirty things that happen in the food industry. And, once we know about it, we only source bean to bar chocolate, for our kitchen. So we are paying like $24 a pound for chocolate. And we can get technically fair trade chocolate for $4 to $6. And people see fair trade and they assume, oh, it's fair trade, it's good. But it's not always that way. And so I think we try to explain the value in keeping small family farms in business. And it's not just about them existing, but that's, less subdivisions and better for the climate, better for our local economy. Because when you buy produce that comes from South America, very little of that money actually goes towards a community.
Right.
And so there's so many benefits to buying local, and there's so many reasons why it costs what it does. And we know that's a big challenge with fresh foods and getting them into the hands of everybody. And so that's something we're always trying to tackle.
So you're not making cappuccino these days. I mean, you can. And you will if you got to jump in there. You can and you will. You're not baking bread on the daily. What is your role now? This is a beehive. That's exactly what it is. This is a beehive of activity. People coming off the trail, a bunch of employees, a bunch of people shopping, people playing in the play area, ordering food, picking up food. There's a lot going on. So what role do you have?
So Jac and I split some of the basic functions. And so I still am in charge of the marketing, and I have a team of 2, and I do a lot of the product curating.
So you make those beautiful logos for the bags and things?
Oh, not me personally, but my team does.
Them. Oh, man.
Yeah.
Those are some nice looking grocery bags.
Thank you.
Yeah,
that was Caroline.
Shout out to Caroline.
So I direct a lot of that, and then Jac directs a lot of the insurance, HR stuff, financial stuff. And so we can both do a lot of each other's roles, but we have our focus areas. But I'm usually late to get into shows, and I just got into Ted Lasso a couple months ago. And there's an episode about, I forget her name, being the woman boss. And this is a lot of what we do is she says what she does. She just shows up, she solves problems, and she puts out fires, and that's kind of ends up being at least half of what we do. There's always something that, we need to fix. And if not, we're always trying to make it better.
I love that. Do you have a radius that you cut off as far as what you decide is local and what goes into the store?
Yeah, we don't have a super strict radius because that's hard. We used to say South Carolina and neighboring states, but some parts of Georgia and Tennessee are 7 hours away.
Right.
And some parts are an hour and a half away.
Right.
And so we have this year changed our standards. So kind of half of Tennessee is still local, and then further is regional, and trying to put a radius. But more than the radius, what's important to us is, well, that, of course, but then having a connection and the transparency of where your things are from. And so I always use Jenny's ice cream as an example because she's based in Ohio. But she really cares about where she sources her dairy and her berries, and she shares a lot of our values. And so to us, that's a lot of transparency, and that's important for us. And it's an exceptional taste, exceptional quality. And so we proudly sell her ice cream. And then, we have I wouldn't say a lot of local ice cream makers. We have some, but they don't source local dairy and they don't source local fruits. And not all of them, but that's just a challenge we run into is we want to support everyone local and everyone doing something good.
And it also provides more value for your customers because they probably want to buy Jenny's anyway, and they can buy from you, which will help your add-on price and will be more convenient for them. They won't have to go somewhere else. So it works out.
Yeah.
Right.
Now that we're bigger and we can buy in more volume, we have successfully, and we'll always try, to convince our vendors, we'll bring them in. So we have this caramel maker, Sweet Homes, and we suggested to her she should use local cream if she can, but she had no way of getting it. So we have a small arm of the business that does wholesale. And so we started bringing in local cream for her, and now she uses local cream in her caramel sauce.
It's a wonderful thing.
Yeah.
That's
so
just fun.
We try to influence people whenever we can.
That's great. You're doing so much here. What is making you hungry? What is next? What's percolating for you?
So we're kind of out of space. This building is like a maze, as you've seen.
Listeners, I'm stuck. And if she doesn't lead me back out to my car, I'm going to set up a cot because I can't get out.
We have all these nooks and crannies, and while we try to celebrate them in any way we could, they lead to a lot of inefficiencies. And so we do want to find better warehousing space where everything's on one level and, there's a loading dock and not a truck going through a parking lot. We are, I could tell you a secret. It might be out by the time the podcast comes out.
Okay.
But we're going to start selling soft serve ice cream.
Oh.
So it should be in a couple weeks, maybe even by this weekend. We're on the trail. We're really busy. We actually used to do soft serve when we opened, and then we just had so much to do we couldn't stay on top of it. But there's a local, or I guess I'd call them, I don't know if we consider them local or regional, but they're from North Carolina. But we found a local dairy that makes their own soft serve mix. So that's really exciting. Ranloo.
Yes. They make a honeysuckle gelato.
Really?
I think so. I have it saved on one of my Instagram posts. I'm that weird. When I see something, I'm like, well, next time I'm in North Carolina, I'm going to hit that.
Yeah.
That's part of my research. So yeah. Okay, good. I'm sad that it's going to be this weekend and not today.
Well, I can actually give you a sample.
Oh, good. I'll take that sample. That is, I'll accept that privilege. Yes, I will. What is one aspect of this job that you've created for yourself that really meshes like a puzzle piece with a natural aspect of your personality?
That's a good question. I mean, I love food and I love telling the story about it. And so I think having that, I feel really fortunate that that's a huge part of my job. And so we do that through social media. We send out emails, but even when I walk through the store and just interact with people and our staff, it's really fulfilling. And I feel really privileged that I get to do that every day.
Yeah. Stories are fun. It is good. You're a good storyteller too. So,
thank you.
Yeah. What is something keeping you up at night?
There's a train near my house, and every day at 5, it toots its horn.
You're like, why? No one's crossing there.
I don't know, but I mean, when you run a business, there's not always actually, but occasionally there will be an issue and you don't know how to solve it. We have 120 or 125 employees right now.
Wow.
And so, we have a lot of staff and they work so hard for us and we want to do the best for them. And so finding ways to make the jobs better or to buy more from farmers or, to make the customer experience better. I wouldn't say that there's specific issues keeping me up at night, but it is hard to turn that part of your brain off.
I agree. Okay, this is a question that I reserved just for Southern Fork guests, and it's my version of what we used to term in the business the death for a meal question. I used to ask, if you had one meal left, what would you eat? And I want to instead bring you some things that bring you life. So this is my magic picnic basket question. With this wonderful basket, I can time travel. I can go back and ask anybody to make one more bite of something you love. I can source for you, although you're pretty good at it. And I can cook a little bit. So I would love to put some of your favorite things today in that basket, things that bring you life. They don't have to go together. Just some things to let us know how delicious your life has been.
And they don't have to go together.
No.
Good. Well, I love warm bread. There's nothing like a warm bread. And, one of the fulfilling things we do is like if you put a warm bread in someone's hands, like it's magical. So I'd say that with some salted butter. And we have
mayonnaise anymore?
No, I'm not into mayonnaise anymore. And we have a farmer who makes a cultured butter that is to die for. And so bread with butter. I also love fast food, Chinese food. It's hard to find that source with good ingredients. We eat it sparingly, or we'll try to make it and recreate it at home, but we'll probably don't use as much salt or fat as, a real restaurant would. But I love like a good old fashioned, I love pan-fried noodles. It's something I used to eat as a kid growing up, and we would go to Chinatown, for family events. Probably those two would be my top for right now. But, it changes. Sometimes I'll, in a few months, I might say risotto.
Yeah. It seems firmly planted in the carb area, though. Bread. Bread, noodles, and risotto, right?
Yeah.
All right. Well, if people want to learn more, you know what I'd suggest? Go to thesouthernfork.com. You're going to have links there as well as images so you can see the face behind the voice. If you like what you hear, beyond Swamp Rabbit Café, there are more than 325 episodes in the archives. And so that means there are lots of discussions of local business, probably more than one discussion of soft serve, and I cover mayonnaise a lot. So thank you so much for taking the time and finding a quiet place for us to sit in this bustling hive of activity.
Thank you.
Yeah. Hello and welcome to Talking with My Mouth Full. I really enjoyed my Greenville residency, part of this Southern Fork summer. I was there for, I think, 8 days, and I did, as you can tell, a lot of podcasts from the area. It's very food focused, but next time I return, I am going to make sure that I spend some time on the Swamp Rabbit Trail. It was pretty hot when I was in Greenville, and I was doing a lot of work recording and doing research and, trying to keep up with all my other work as well. So I wasn't able to get out on the trail like I wanted to be able to do. I saw so many bikers coming by the Swamp Rabbit when I was there. And I really want to make sure that I add that to my list for the cooler months when I can head up and maybe have a little bit of a weekend off and hit the trail. So I know a lot of people who bike and who are, I call it biking, but obviously I'm not in that group because you would call it cycling. And so I know a lot of people who are very active cyclists, and of course they have their gear and they have their bikes and they bring them up to Greenville, and it's a very, very popular trail to bike. And Travelers Rest, there's some breweries. It's just a lot of fun for cyclists to do. But if you don't have a bike, Greenville has plenty of places where you can rent a bike for the day and make sure that you get out on the Swamp Rabbit Trail and get some nature moments there. Greenville is in the foothills of the upstate. It's pretty close to the mountains though. So these are some decent foothills. Okay. I ran, while I was there, and, one of the hills, one of the days just pretty much took me out, and I had to walk up the hill halfway. So, these are pretty serious foothills, but they're going to be a great challenge for bikers. So I just wanted to share that with you because I think it's an aspect of Greenville that has really come on in the last decade or so. Thanks so much for listening. I hope you get out and have some good time, and then I hope you get back and maybe have a tomato sandwich. I've seen my Instagram feed just fill up with tomato sandwiches in the past week or so, and I am ready for one of my own with Duke's mayonnaise and lots of salt and pepper and cayenne. Thanks to Jen Rice for interviewing me in her recent Garden Gun article on tomato sandwiches. And I have my eye out for a Cherokee purple tomato. It's getting late in the season here. I gotta get on this track, but the Southern Fork summer and all this delicious seafood and other great eats that I've been eating has really taking me off course for my summer tomato sandwich, but I'm recommitting, and we'll find one soon.
You've been listening to The Southern Fork. I can't wait to bring you more culinary conversations, but in the meantime, I have one question. Are you gonna eat all that?